I'm Chris Hansen, right now on Crime Watch Daily from here in New York. This is the sound of pure evil. It's the voice of California's most wanted serial killer.
He put a knife right to my chest.
An evil maniac behind 12 murders and 45 rapes, playing Catch Me If You Can with cops.
It's off the charts. This case is off the charts.
Now, a crime writer's eerie obsession with the case
Is that the picture of the guy? Looks like me, doesn't he?
lands him on the list of possible suspects.
They thought maybe I was the guy. I was the East Area Rapist.
Was that true?
Right now,
Andrea Isom, sir, with Crime Watch Daily.
Jason Matera with Crime Watch Daily.
this
I'm Elizabeth. I'm here with Crime Watch.
I'm Michelle from Crime Watch Daily.
Anna Garcia from Crime Watch.
is Crime Watch Daily.
Stay off my property. We'll find you again. We always do.
Welcome to Crime Watch Daily, everyone. I'm Chris Hansen. Evil doesn't even begin to describe the man known as the East Area Rapist. The FBI says he's responsible for 12 murders and as many as 45 sexual assaults. Today, our Anna Garcia is teaming up with the feds, hoping to finally put a face to this ruthless killer.
He may be America's most horrifying serial rapist and killer. And he likes to stay in touch. Still terrorizing his victims who survived.
He's making these phone calls and wanting to listen to the victims or somehow relive the crime, perhaps. Very scary, very chilling.
Police believe it is the actual voice of the man who has blazed a trail of terror up and down the state of California, accounting for 45 rapes and a dozen murders spanning 10 years.
The victims would be asleep. They would be in bed. They would be feeling their safest. You're awakened by a flashlight shown in your eyes and a gun pointed at you in the middle of the night. In many of the cases, he would rape the female victim and then he would bludgeon the victims to death.
My mother was beaten to death as well. I don't know which blow killed her, but I know she died in terror.
Once thought to be several different criminals over a long and far-ranging crime spree, he's been given many names.
East Area Rapist, Original Night Stalker, Golden State Killer, Diamond Knot Killer.
It took years to connect all the crimes to one man, who remains at large to this day. But police don't want to give this monster a new name. Today, they want only one name, his real name.
We have had at least 4 suspects that I can recall during my time as a homicide detective.
Do you think he's still in California?
I think he very possibly is. I think he very possibly is still in Sacramento.
The dreadful career of this most elusive and intelligent killer rapist begins in and around Sacramento, California.
It was a sleepy town, small town community. People left their doors unlocked, they left their cars unlocked in the driveway.
But when the fiend known as the East Area Rapist was done with it, old Sacramento was changed forever. And it would change investigator Carol Daly, too. She was the only female on the force working sex crimes, and the East Area Rapist case landed on her desk.
Gun shops sold out of guns. Hardware stores sold out of locks and alarm systems.
So number 1 occurred in Cordova Meadows, and that's actually where we have the strongest cluster in the entire series.
The tally is devastating. Over 30 rapes in the Sacramento area, all in upper middle class neighborhoods, all in the dead of night in the most frightening way imaginable.
When people are probably in their deepest of sleep, he makes entry into that home. He is all of a sudden appearing at the foot of their bed. He would very commonly be wearing some sort of a mask, whether it was a mask that he fashioned himself or ski masks that he would purchase at times.
I looked up and there was a man standing there with a ski mask with a long butcher knife.
Jane Carson Sandler is one of his earliest victims, and she tells the blood-curdling tale to Crime Watch Daily. Awakened past midnight with her 3-year-old son sleeping next to her in bed.
And he was just standing right over me. I mean, he put a knife right to my chest and made a few little cuts. We were tied and gagged and blindfolded very quickly, frozen in fear. Heart just almost coming through my throat, coming out of my chest.
She says he removes her son from the bed, and then he returns.
He untied my ankles, and then I knew that he was going to rape me. While he was raping me, I didn't even pay attention to that because I was just so terrorized by, where's my son? Where is he? What did you do with him? Did you kill him? He told me if I were to say anything, he would kill both of us. And he just kept telling me to shut up.
The attacker stays in the house for an hour, going through drawers, rummaging in the kitchen. Then he leaves.
I was able to get the cloth out of my mouth and able to get my blindfold down. I was able to untie my hands, and I noticed that my son was asleep next to me. I just prayed that he's gone, and I woke up my son and I said, "We've got to go, we've got to go."
Jane's son is unhurt and recalls little of the incident. But she says the attacker still checks in over the following months as if to make sure she doesn't forget anything.
What did he do?
He'd call, and then there would be no one on the other end of the phone. And I just knew it was him. I just knew it was him.
In time, the rapist, estimated to be between the ages of 18 and 30, becomes emboldened. He starts attacking when both men and women are home asleep, binding the man and raping the woman. And he adds a chilling new technique to maximize the terror.
He would throw the bindings to the female, tell her to bind the male up. Then our offender would go and tie the female up. At a certain point, he separates the female out into the family room, and he comes in with the dishes and puts it on the male's back and tells the male, if I hear these move, she's dead, or I'm going to cut a part of her off and bring it to you. At certain points during the attacks, he sometimes would even tell the victims, I'm going to go eat now. And the victims would hear him go into the refrigerator. Sometimes he would actually take food out onto the back patio and eat out there.
And he always takes something from the home, a memento to remember them by.
Something that would be significant to the victim, a class ring, maybe a ring that a wife had given to a husband that had his initials in it, or their anniversary date. Sometimes photos would be torn in half and he would take half of the photo. He's still able to prolong that crime by messing with the victim.
By now, the communities in and around Sacramento are utterly traumatized, and rumors abound as police try to calm the public.
At one of the community meetings, a gentleman stood up and said he absolutely could not believe that a rapist could come into a home and rape a woman while the husband was in bed with her.
But surprise, it appears there may be an unexpected guest among them, and he is taking notes.
About 7 months later, when this husband and his wife were victims of the East Area Rapist.
Do you believe that the rapist singled that man out?
I believe the rapist was at the meeting. I believe he may have followed them home and just waited.
It's not random in your mind?
No, it was not random.
He is a force of evil on the loose, but police know that things could get even worse if they don't catch him soon.
His hatred, his frenzy, his terrorizing was escalating, and I really was fearful that the next case we were called to was going to be a homicide case.
Next, the East Area Rapist strikes hard.
Brian and Katie end up in the backyard of a residence where they are both shot and killed.
And police pick up a possible suspect in the East Area Rapist case. In a Crime Watch Daily exclusive, we talked to that same man for the first time ever on national television.
They thought maybe I was the guy. I was the East Area Rapist.
Was that true?
The East Area Rapist is building a reputation as Sacramento's worst nightmare. His evil intent matched only by his skill at eluding capture.
He might not necessarily be stalking the victim, but he's stalking the neighborhood. He is very familiar with the areas that he commits his crimes. He has an exit route planned out. He knows each house in that neighborhood. He knows how to navigate in the dark.
I don't think we're looking at the troll under the bridge, looking at a sex registrant that is transient and just moving around and attacking couples. I think we are dealing with somebody that probably has the skill sets to be a relatively successful person in his normal life.
A few witnesses say they have seen him fleeing from one of his many crime scenes or prowling the neighborhood in search of prey. But all police have to go on is a few possible sketches of the most wanted man in town.
What most people don't realize is those are composites that other people said, hey, I saw a strange guy walking in the neighborhood. None of those composites came from the victims because he always had a mask on. So we, to this day, really don't know what his face looks like.
And police believe he finally makes a misstep. And it's a mistake with horrific consequences. A young married couple named Brian and Katie Majori are walking their dog on an early evening when investigators say they encounter the rapist, without his disguise, lurking near a house. Brian is a security officer at a nearby Air Force base, and cops say he may have focused in on the suspect.
He is prowling, looking into maybe some windows, conducting his surveillance. Brian, being a security policeman, I very much believe he would have attempted to intervene and catch this individual.
But it all goes horribly wrong.
Brian is shot and killed in one backyard. It appears that Katie was trying to run through the two backyards to get out through a side gate, where she ends up being caught by the suspect, and he ends up shooting her.
It's a brutal slaying, the first murders linked to the rapist.
I think that in that particular killing, it was to avoid detection and people figuring out who he was.
Cops are all eyes and ears on the street, keeping a sharp lookout for anyone that might remotely resemble the attacker. Several men are questioned and released. And they pick up this man.
Is that the picture of the guy?
Yeah.
Looks like me, doesn't he?
I'm sorry?
He looks like me, doesn't he? Kinda.
He's Michael Bowker, a sometimes crime writer who has, ironically in later years, written much on the very case for which he was questioned.
And how old were you then?
Early 20s, and I was living right in the area where he was striking. I actually was pulled over twice by police when I was jogging because I'm somewhat the characteristics of this guy.
In the years after the East Area Rapist attacks, Bowker says he was hired by Sacramento Magazine to write hard-edged stories.
And I suggested a retro story on the East Area Rapist.
So it was your idea?
It was my idea. And the first time I talked to one of the investigators who had been involved as a rookie, he invited me over to his house.
But he says he had authorities once again scratching their heads and questioning his true identity all those years later.
His wife was a forensic psychiatrist, and they stood on one side of the screen door where I could not see them, but they could see me, and started interrogating me. They thought maybe I was involved somehow and that I had come back to bring it back up again.
What do you mean?
They thought maybe I was the guy. I was the East Area Rapist, coming back to redo the story, to bring it back up again, to bring attention to myself.
Was that true?
No. So I started teasing them. And finally, they let me into the house, and we've been friends ever since.
And to be clear, Bowker has never been named as a suspect in any crimes whatsoever. Today, he lives in Goleta, not far from the very homes targeted by the East Area Rapist. And he has put his unpleasant experience with the case to good use.
That's really creepy.
It was very creepy, but for 30 seconds, I felt what it would be like under the spotlight for that. Well, I'm using that feeling in the book that I'm writing.
Maybe you'll get to write the final chapter.
I hope so. It's not a story I look forward to writing.
Back in earlier chapters of his violent spree, the East Area Rapist heads about 90 miles farther south in search of new victims and possibly less heat from the police. And cops have some theories about his changing base of operations as well.
Why do you think he moved down here?
I personally believe that he moved down here because of his job. I think he ended up coming down this area because his occupation changed or his job assignment changed. And studies of serial predators have shown that oftentimes they are doing victim selection during their normal living activities.
Over the following year, he racks up a terrifying tally of up to 18 attacks, most of them involving couples.
For most of the attacks, it appears that he's jumping off the freeway and hitting neighborhoods that are close to the freeway. His MO down here is identical to what we saw in the attacks up in Sacramento.
For now, all of the victims of the home invasion attacks survive. But even though police have not yet connected all the crimes to one man, they still regard the East Area Rapist as the prime suspect in the murders of Brian and Katie Majori, and they fear more bloody encounters yet to come.
Very early on in the series, in fact, some of the early psychologists that were consulted by Sacramento had predicted that this guy would kill.
And their worst fears are about to be realized. Next, the East Area Rapist heads deep into Southern California and transforms into a full-fledged monster with an unquenchable thirst for blood.
It's off the charts. This case is off the chart. You can't believe what this offender does.
The East Area Rapist has triggered a wave of fear and terror across Central California.
What's really remarkable about this case and series is just the sheer number of cases involved. He's one of the most prolific serial offenders in California's history.
And he grows even more diabolical as he heads south from Sacramento, while cops try desperately to find and stop him.
After he does the second attack in Stockton, that's where he now starts to toggle back and forth between Modesto and Davis.
And later, the attacker adds an unspeakable touch of horror to his MO. He not only rapes and threatens, he brutally murders all of his victims over the next 2.5 years, leaving a trail of blood from Santa Barbara to Orange County.
He would rape the female victim, and then he would bludgeon the victims to death using an unknown object, usually, but he would take the item, in most cases, from the crime scene.
Lyman and Charlene Smith are an upwardly mobile couple living in Ventura County when the East Area Rapist comes calling. Can you tell me a little bit about this family?
Charlene was 33 years old. She made jewelry. She was kind of stay-at-home person. Lyman was a very respected and prominent attorney in Santa Paula. It was pretty much expected that he was going to be one of the county's next Superior Court judges.
But that all changes the day Lyman's 13-year-old son from his first marriage shows up to mow the lawn on an otherwise pleasant Sunday afternoon and rings the front doorbell.
And doesn't get an answer. So he tries the door to the front of the house and it's unlocked. And once he's inside, he sees that there's couch cushions kind of scattered through the family room.
Police say the boy goes into the master bedroom where a clock alarm is buzzing.
He sees his dad and stepmom in bed with the covers pulled over them, and he steps around them to turn the alarm off. And then he realizes that, wait a minute, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they should be awake. He pulls the covers back a little bit and notices it's his dad, and his dad is dead.
The The shocking discovery of the murdered remains of Lyman and Charlene Smith, who was also raped, sends waves of fear and alarm through the neighborhood.
Charlene is face up and Lyman's laying face down in the bed. They're both bound. Their wrists are tied behind their back and their ankles are also tied together.
Cops secure the grisly crime scene and go to work piecing together how it went down.
Master bedroom window being cracked and the blinds being up. It's our thought that our suspect watched the lights go down, watched them actually get physically into bed. That's also the side of the house where there was firewood stacked. It was pretty obvious that the log that was used as a murder weapon came from that stack of firewood. The murder weapon was basically lying between them in the bed.
A piece of firewood
Yes.
was between them in the bed.
With blood on it, yes. So this is going to be Charlene. This is going to be her autopsy. This is the top of her skull. This is the side. They think for sure there was at least 2 blows with her. The first one would have killed her. There was no need to hit her the second time.
And detectives take note of something odd about the bindings used to tie the wrists of the victims.
Knots that were used on their wrist got classified as a diamond knot. It's like an ornate knot used in decorative stuff and oftentimes maybe sailing.
Can you show me the diamond knots?
Sure. You can see it when they are originally tagged, and here you have the knot, and then you can also see on this side. They tried to recreate, have someone, say a knot expert, redo these knots, and it was difficult for them to do it. This wasn't an everyday knot.
It's a maddening clue, but it only shows up that one time in a gruesome crime spree that leaves 4 couples slaughtered in their bedrooms, along with 2 other women raped and murdered in separate attacks.
She was very outgoing. She had a great smile. And she liked to have fun. She had very high standards for herself and her work and our home.
Included in that appalling death toll is Sherry Domingo, the mother of Debbie Domingo. The 35-year-old woman bludgeoned to death along with her boyfriend, Gregory Sanchez, at her home near Santa Barbara.
They told me that there were 2 bodies in our house and that they believed that my mother was one of them. And they were right.
Debbie was only 16 at the time and away from home during the attack, but says police have told her more details about the crime in recent years.
There was evidence of footprints in the carpeting in the master bathroom, heavy footprints, as if someone had waited there in the bathroom for an extended period of time. My mother was beaten to death as well. She was killed by one initial blow to the head, but then beaten repeatedly as well.
And investigators say Greg Sanchez did not go quietly.
Gregory Sanchez gets up and runs and charges at the offender. The offender shoots Sanchez through the cheek, but it was a non-fatal wound. You see a fight occurring in the closet area where ultimately the East Area Rapist kills Sanchez with multiple blows to the head. I think that scared our offender. He got into a physical fight. He's probably thinking, I could have been caught, I could have been killed.
As suddenly as he began, the East Area Rapist goes quiet. It appears that his long, hellish career may finally be over. But appearances are not what they seem.
He came back and got my sister.
Next, they were teenagers when they lost loved ones to the East Area Rapist. And now Crime Watch Daily brings them together for the first time.
You finally get somebody who understands what you're going through.
And it turns out there is one descriptive feature of the East Area Rapist that virtually every survivor of his rage remembers.
Wow. That's really interesting, isn't it?
It's been almost 5 years since the last attack by the East Area Rapist. At this time, police have still not linked all the crimes to one man, but hopefully his terrifying crime spree is over for good.
Was he incarcerated? Was he overseas? Was he out of the country? I don't know. What was he doing, and we've done a lot to try to figure out where he was or what he was doing during that time.
But any hopes that he is out of business are dashed the day he crosses paths with 18-year-old Janelle Cruz.
She was vibrant, vivacious, outgoing, beautiful, Everyone that knew her loved her.
We were like sidekicks. We were always together. We did everything together.
Janelle's 17-year-old best friend and sister was the first in her family to get the terrible news while on a skiing vacation.
I got a phone call saying that my sister had been killed. She was home alone, and somebody came in and brutally raped and killed her. From what I was told was she was getting ready for bed, and she could have been in the bathroom when she was first attacked, but they did find her in her room on the bed.
I believe at that point he saw Janelle, and that was a case that he couldn't help himself, and he decided he had to go and kill her.
It's a very rare personality type. It makes me emotional thinking about her because her sister's the same way, and I talk to her sister every week on the phone.
Both Michelle Cruz and Debbie Domingo, whose mother Sherry was earlier murdered by the East Area Rapist, chat regularly online, but have never met in person until Crime Watch Daily brought them together.
Oh my goodness.
We did it. We managed to get in the same place at the same time.
Take a breath, girlie. Take a breath.
I came out of that darkness and just really started looking a little bit deeper into the case, putting myself out there, trying to get more people aware of the case.
This year is pretty exciting. I really feel like we're getting somewhere.
The Janelle Cruz killing is the last known attack by the East Area Rapist to this day. But a solid team of detectives all over California are still working hard to catch him, dead or alive.
What we have to ask ourselves is where the East Area Rapist would be today. If you look on pure statistics alone, a male of his age, purely statistically, would be alive. We're looking at a male between 5'8", 6 foot tall, and we know that he probably had light-colored eyes.
My sweet spot for his age range is roughly about 65 to the early 70s.
Do you think he's still in California?
I think he very possibly is. I think he very possibly is still in Sacramento.
Really?
I do.
The clues to his identity are few. He never left a single fingerprint, and none of the surviving victims can provide a physical description of the masked assailant, except for one very small detail we found in the case books. And for lack of a better way to say it, extremely small penis, it says on the report.
It does. They all describe him having an extremely small penis.
Victim Jane Carson Sandler, one of his earliest victims, confirms that detail.
It was very small. Maybe that was part of his psychological hang-up.
It's something about the rapist that proves to be therapeutic for his surviving victims when they gather for mutual support.
And we all sat around the table, and some of us cried, some of us were in shock, some of us laughed.
But not Carol Daly. She picked up the phone and called doctors' offices.
We went to a doctor to see if there was a condition of kind of an infantile penis, patients that they might see. And they do, in fact, have patients like that.
And there is yet another crucial development in identifying the East Area Rapist that has come to the forefront in recent years. And this could actually be big. Thanks to the modern-day use of DNA evidence, the sperm of the attacker recovered from his victims shows that all the rapes and murders once thought to be the work of several men are now linked to one lone monster.
They don't get connected until 10 years after his last known crime. DNA then was able to make that connection between Northern and Southern California.
It's a massive step forward in solving who did it.
He didn't know about DNA, and that's what is going to probably do him in. At some point, we're going to find him. There have been some suspects that I've developed, and I think I've got the guy. And sometimes I've spent several years trying to track the guy down to get his DNA, thinking I've got him, and then the DNA results come back, and it's not him.
But cops are far from giving up the hunt, and they can use any help they can get from the public.
Was there something was somewhat odd, right? Something struck an individual odd. Did somebody find something that was a number of these types of trinkets that matched the kinds of items he took from his victims? Probably one of the most easily recognizable would be Lycoming College class ring.
And now the FBI has recently signed on to the case, offering a $50,000 reward.
Somebody knows this guy's name.
And maybe then, it's the East Area Rapist who will need protection from the victims he once tormented.
What do you need to say to him?
Well, had it been right after my rape, and I too would have a knife in my hand, and then I would blindfold him, and then I would unzip his trousers, and then I wouldn't hurt him. All I wanted him to know was fear.